Backbone is an extremely captivating game that tells its story through anthropomorphic animals in place for humans and uses the differences between species to further build its world. Its extremely well-written characters make the society they live in come alive, and its art style is one that makes more sense the more you play it, as it fits its world perfectly. With its beautiful color choice and design in both its people and the areas you explore, the use of dark subject matter in a world so lively and complete is an absolute joy to play through, and I'm glad I get to share some of its magic with you today. Welcome to Backbone, a murder mystery. The game opens up with a slow pull shot of our main character, Howard Loader, peacefully enjoying a cigarette and reading a book while he takes an afternoon bath. Before he finishes his peaceful quiet time, it's interrupted after the phone in the other room starts to ring. The call was to let someone into his building, leaving him just enough time to clean his apartment before they arrive. As you walk around the apartment, you find a photo developer, a corkboard with old case files on it, and a red light hanging right above it, and with his attire we can assume he's a private investigator of some sort. After some time passes, you get a knock on the door and let in your latest client. Her name is Odette. She came here because she suspects of being cheated on due to her husband's sudden irregular behavior and wants a divorce. Hiring you to take pictures of him in the act will give her the evidence she needs in court for custody of their children. After she gives you the details on how he looks like and where he works, we grab our camera and leave. The dialogue from this game might come in the form of a text box, but it does a great job at setting the tone of the situation you're in. The somber and deeper notes playing from a piano with the sound of nature to fill in the gaps makes its writing stand out even more. The game encourages you to slow down and take in the world by asking questions and letting you choose what to say to characters you interact with. The freedom of choice, however liberating, is a double-edged sword, so choose what you say carefully. When we're finished talking with Odette, we go downtown to the bustling city streets of Granville.
Are you coming home tonight? The time is passing by. When life is nearby, will I?
Walking down the sidewalk and taking in all the beautiful little details. Friends enjoying each other's company, waiting in line for the club, getting a bite to eat and talking, people waiting outside the theater for a motion picture they will soon see, and others walking down the sidewalks with their umbrellas or driving in their cars. The downtown area is truly a sight to behold, with the lights reflecting off the water on the streets and sidewalks, turning an otherwise dark time into a place of color and personality. The use of the camera in this game is really clever and adds more detail to something made in a pixely art style. The layering used from the foreground to background done with the seamless connection of 2D and 3D elements, and the way drops of water hit the camera gives this game more added detail that sells you on its world. The sounds of the cars driving by or of your feet hitting the wet sidewalk to fill the space of an otherwise quiet game with smooth jazz right behind is never overdone and makes this game with zero voice acting immerse you further. The first person we talk to is Anatoly, an old friend of ours, as he stands in front of the newly restored Rogue Theater while smoking a cigarette. After catching up a bit, we show him the picture and he doesn't seem to recognize him at all. Anatoly is a taxi driver and he sees a bunch of faces every day, so how could he remember Jeremy Green's? Walking down further, we see a group of guys standing and talking in front of Mr. Green's workplace. They're all bankers that work with him. After talking and making up a BS story about how he owes us money, the man responds in kind and it looks like he owes quite a few others as well. It turns out he left work early and we find out that he frequents a club called The Bite, but that this man doesn't know where he is at the moment. Either way, it's a lead and we're going to follow it. Talking to the bouncer doesn't bear much fruit, and after we try to bribe him, he threatens us and we leave. There must be a way in, and we'll find it. After exploring and chatting up the locals, you walk down an alleyway to find an old friend of yours. We don't know why he's here, but he doesn't look too good. As we talk to him, he mentions that there's someone named Johnny, and he's known to help people cut in line and sell drugs like Hype, Shatterfang, and this new crazy one called Monkey Butt. We also find out that the new owner of this club is a member of a notorious bear crime family, the Bloodworths. We thank Larry for his information and go talk to Johnny. After talking to him, he works his magic and the bouncer from earlier lets us in the Bite. The Bite is the most premier nightclub in town. The club is for felines and canines mainly, so you being in here is a bit odd to say the least. The ambient lighting sets the tone, and with the smoke from people's cigars rising to the ceiling, you walk through the rows of filled seats and sit down at the bar to enjoy yourself.
Seeps into a skin, into a shadow. Shadows fall from.
As the song finishes, we turn and see that a bear woman is sitting alone. This is the owner of the club and instantly sees that we're a bit lost. As we continue talking to her, we try to gain any information about our missing otter, telling her our alias, telling her that we're here for some crazy new drug, and in the end, she's too clever and sees right through it all. This is what dealing with the mafia looks like, huh? What was Jeremy Green really up to? She doesn't seem like an honest person. There has to be more. These thoughts are the ones that run through your head while you're being kicked out. There's more to this story than meets the eye, and Odette still needs a picture of her husband. We might have gotten kicked out, but there has to be another way in. When we go back into the alley behind the club, we see at the end of it a new face. Talking with her, we find out that her daughter is in there and they haven't let her see her in days. So we promise to try and find her before we find a way back in. Walking down the street, we find two merchants on the sidewalk selling their respective goods. One being a little kid named Sid, and the other a grown man named Bo. Bo's magazine stand is perfect for us to climb onto the roof, but the only way he'll let us climb is if we get rid of his competition. When we talk to Sid, he flips the tables on Bo and he tells us that he's been selling pornographic magazines, which is illegal. When we go back to Bo and tell him to get out of here, he curses both of our species and leaves. Climbing up to get to the door on the roof, we see more of the city and how beautiful this game's art direction is. When we finally get to the door, a thought occurs. Earlier, when we were talking to Sid, he said that he didn't know about any other way into the Bite, and that he's been up here before, but then confidently lets us go, and gives information to move Bo out of the way. Was he lying to us? In the city, you can't trust anyone, and you have to keep your story consistent. Never reveal too much about yourself, or it will come back to bite you later. Even though this thought isn't the most reassuring, we still have to focus on the task at hand, and with that, we re-enter the club. When we're in, the room on the inside is a dressing room, and when we inspect the things on the table, we can see some candy, a magazine, and a birthday card made out to a person named Rose, which was the name of the daughter of the woman outside. Continuing through this brothel and sneaking past the rodent guard on duty, we find an empty private room, with a tie behind a lewd painting on the wall. Removing the painting reveals a lift to a lower level, and taking it puts you into a freezer. After sneaking past the chefs in the kitchen with the help of a freezer's intercom and a blender, you make your way into a locker room with a locked keypad. Solving the puzzle for the correct combination leads you down a basement so dark you can barely see a thing. Searching for a switch leads you down the hall to an empty room, as you finally find the lights. Before you're able to process the horrific nature of what's actually happening underneath this terrible place, you hear a person coming and you hide in a bin. As he talks to someone on the phone, so nonchalant as if he isn't a butcher of people, you try your best to calm down as to not get caught, and after he leaves you steal his keys and escape. This game isn't for the faint of heart, and the first time playing through, I was just as shocked as you were. I thought this game was going to be a fun and playful experience that has nice characters and funny dialogue, but instead you find a story about bigotry, addiction, abuse, murder, and much more. What started out as simple allegations of infidelity has turned into something we never should have seen in the first place, and never could have imagined. We know too much now, and I still want to dive deeper into what this game's story has to offer. Howard tries to drown himself in alcohol to forget what he just saw while sitting at a park bench in a dangerous part of town. The park is in memorial to the Great Fire, the fire caused by a war that happened before Howard's parents were even born. As he finishes his beer with only a few drops remaining, he throws it and tries to make his way home. Before he can, he walks into random thugs that want to steal from him. After you tell them you don't have any money, they beat you up and run away. As you come to, you see a female fox with an umbrella staring down at you, and afterwards, she takes you to her secret home around the docks of the city. Being apprehensive about putting your trust into anyone, she tells you about herself to let you know that you can trust her. As you finally get situated, she introduces herself. Her name is Renee. She asks you about the club because she's writing a book about Clarissa Bloodworth. The book will be about how she's the most non-official powerful person in the city, how she has influence, and how or who she knows in high places. She creates drugs and has high-profile people go to her club, even apes. Apparently, apes are elite in this world and don't really like to show their faces, so to see them out in public, especially to go to the bite, shows how much power she truly has. After letting her know about what's happening underneath the club, she's noticeably startled. Bloodworth is capable of terrible things, but she never suspected this. Needing more information, she makes you a proposition. She wants to partner up and investigate further about the truth behind all of this. You work on the ground and in the field, and she helps you from behind the scenes. After you agree, she tells you her lead. Behind the bite was a parked Sterling cider truck. However, the truck is a fake. Putting two and two together leaves you with the idea that they might be smuggling flesh. Renee tells us that she hired someone a while ago to track down where the truck goes, and she says it's to a store in Gast Town. Assuming that the truck would go somewhere that serves similar items, we can narrow down what stores to visit. Before we leave, we use the phone to make a few calls. The first to Mrs. Green, to tell her that she needs to call the police, and before she can get a word in, and hearing her audibly worried voice, we hang up. Our second call is to our mother to let her know that we'll be MIA for a week or two, and to not worry about us. Finally, we call our unofficial self-titled partner in crime, Anatoly. He picks us up, we head to Gast Town, and here is where the story truly starts to pick up steam. Gast Town. The section of the city, and I quote Mr. Loader here, where bourgeoisie snobs dream of overpriced salad. An expensive place to live, but it's safe and clean, making it more than worth it for people who can afford it. After Tully finds a good parking spot, we're free to explore the streets and meet and interact with its people to pass the time before Clarissa's truck gets here. As much as the story progresses, you never, ever want to skip the interactions you can have with random strangers of this dystopian Vancouver. While playing through this game, the first time I missed so many things that made the experience so much better in the end. A lot of the locals may be pretentious or elitist, however, no matter where you are, you can still find some beauty in the worst of places. Beauty that you will miss if you don't go looking for it. When we're done passing the time, the truck arrives and two people walk out to drop off boxes to the local liquor store. We run towards it, and as we enter, one of the two people sizes us up before exiting. Louis, the store owner, stands at the counter before we ask him about what they just delivered. He stands there denying and deflecting before we get the truth out of him, and afterwards he gives us the key to the storage room in the back. When we enter, we find the crates that were just dropped off, and we open one. Underneath the lid are a number of small packages, individually wrapped in thick, silvery paper that gives off a tangy odor of chemicals, musty smells of a damp basement, and old cigar smoke. Needing your suspicions proved, you peel back the paper to find a neat square of flesh with a light pink color to it and striated texture. Going a step further, you smell it, and there's a melange of intoxicating scents, sweet, fatty, with notes of an acidic tang, showing that no matter how wrong this may be, your biology is still and will always be a part of you. Going back to the storefront, you continue questioning, and Louis tells you that he didn't know about the flesh until his curiosity got the better of him only recently. Miss Bloodworth is keeping his sister alive in exchange for holding the crates at his store until they are redelivered, since he couldn't afford the medical bills that accumulated after his sister was diagnosed. We tell him to give us the package so that we can deliver it ourselves, and he gives us the address. We leave the store, and after calling Renee to let her know what we found, we go to the Tops. As you get to the hotel where Miss Bajra lives, you talk with the concierge and tell him you're here to drop off the package. Before making it to the end of the hall where the elevators are located, a wolf in a suit smoking a cigarette stops you and asks you what you have in the package. Making something up about customer confidentiality, he lets you go, but not before busting your balls as much as possible, showing you the attitude people who work and live in such high places have towards people like you. Taking the elevator to the 11th floor and knocking on the door of the apartment 1144, she greets you with eloquence and sophistication. After handing her the package, she asks us to relay a message for Louis to drop off another special case in a couple of weeks. As we thank her for her time, she gives us a tip and she goes back inside. Now that we know where she lives and we're done with the job, we can finally start working on what we really came here to do. After finding a way outside, we climb our way up and over the fire escape to the top of the building to go to the other side. When we get to the outside of the apartment, we try and find a way in. We see that the window is closed from the inside and there's a slight opening. A woman from the apartment next to us spots us and asks what we're doing. Luckily, she doesn't seem to care that we're clearly trying to sneak into someone's home and just wants to talk to a random stranger. She even flirts with us a bit and even offers us some smoke, but of course we turn it down since we're on a mission. After this simple and sweet interaction, we say our farewells and return to the task at hand. Slightly lifting up the hatch with a putty knife we found next to some construction equipment, the window opens and we climb inside. Unfortunately, however, you are not alone. 2 children of the apes are there, partaking in some mischievous play that accompanies the youth of the especially privileged who wouldn't get more than a slap on the wrist for doing such erroneous things. They open up conversation by asking you if you're lost, and you tell them you are because you're new part-time help. As the conversation continues, the children speak about things in such a way that shows you how disconnected they are from the outside world. Knowing that they're not supposed to be here and convincing them that if they get caught they'll be in big trouble, you make a deal with them. If you look through the door to let them know when the coast is clear, they'll keep this little meeting a secret. After the kids leave, you go to the desk. It's made of beautifully solid and expensive wood and smells of scented oil and smoke, a desk that feels like the world could be run from behind it. After inspecting it further, you can't find any hidden compartments with every drawer on it being locked. However, you do find a pile of papers on the top. You, of course, steal them and then leave the same way you came. Returning to Renee's secret home, you both sit down to read and discuss the papers you stole. The first piece of paper is a handwritten note to a chief tanner. What you manage to piece together from the vague letter is that the papers we stole were from the science minister himself, a high-ranking official in charge of the research that happens within Science City, and that he's the one that's been buying flesh from Clarissa. The next paper is a document of a research project on the analysis of the new protein. The next, a drawing of a small child and his father. After that, another letter, this time from the chief of police, which reads, quote,
Esteemed fellow minister, the recent reports of disappearances from West End have a clear connection. I don't know why you want them left alone. There's only so much we can turn a blind eye to. If this becomes a scandal, it's both our asses. Fix it.
If the minister doesn't want the police investigating, then he'll have to do something about it. The next being a document about the new drug monkey butt, stating that the drug doesn't need to be criminalized because there are no signs of addiction or other risks to public health, with a full toxology report attached that conveniently shows no negative effects and is clearly lying about what it does to people that use it. With the last being an RSVP to a monthly celebration about a delicacy of some kind with the initials TN at the bottom, the same initials of the President Theodore Nashville. Even the president himself is partaking in the feast of his own citizens. After reading through all of the letters and having another long day ahead of them, The two decide to sleep after sharing things about their personal lives, showing the growth and development of their relationship. Having a lead on the mother of one of the missing girls, we find her at her apartment right as she's getting ready to leave for work with stress in her eyes and a look of worry on her face. Telling her the truth about her business, she wants no part of it and only tells us to leave since she's been through enough already. But before she's able to close the door, her son peeks his head through as she yells at him to get back inside. Wanting to not cause her more harm, we leave her alone. But as soon as she leaves, we go back to her apartment, and after we knock on the door, Henry, her son, answers. Asking him some questions, we get a new lead about a girl named Mai she was friends with who lives just down the street. Running down the street to where Mai lives, we knock on her door and her brother answers. His name is Samson, and he knows a thing or two about what we've been investigating the past few days. After a lot of cursing and personal insults, he tells us what he knows, and the theory goes a little something like this. There's something called the Shadow Alliance, and the apes are ruling it for the purpose of total control of every aspect of their lives. And the government is just a front for their evil. At night, they wear blood-red cloaks and throw cannibal feasts of an ancient order, and the alliance was founded with the Bears, the most powerful family of which was the Bloodworths, as they're now known, hence the blood in their name. Quote, Clarissa comes from a long line of ape lovers, so much so that she's sleeping with one. After learning about this new theory, we get back to talking about Mai, and he tells us about someone we've heard before. Her name is Rose, the daughter of the older woman we met in Act 1. Says they were close. Finding out where Florence works, we sneak in and find her, and she remembers us from before. Still having a little bit of hope and being willing to help us, she offers to take us back to her apartment and lets us look around Rose's room in hopes of finding new leads, which we do. After hacking into Rose's computer, we find some less than moral information. Turns out that Rose was working as Clarissa's right-hand woman in the operations of the VIP section at the Bite, and created a system to get the most valuable information from her and other girls' clients, for purposes of blackmail by drugging them and getting them hooked on monkey butt, since in her words, it loosens their tongues. The terminal had information on the whereabouts of the missing girls as well. Rose and Leslie were lovers and wanted to find a place to be together, and Clarissa offered her that chance of freedom outside the wall, and about a person named Dio that could smuggle them, with the last piece of information being the mention of a project artifact. Leaving her room, we tell Florence only some of the information that we found on her computer and tell her that there might be some hope in her daughter being alive. She thanks us, we leave, and return to Renee's. After some time, and once we go over the new developments in the case, Renee leaves to get some food. We know Clarissa knows more than we can imagine, and finding us to a certain extent was expected, yet it doesn't make this feel any better. She came here to find out what we know and to offer us a business proposition, to find out what's happening in the labs of Science City, and we accept. She knows about Renee, yet doesn't know her name, and she even made a threat about our mother. Clarissa will do anything to stay on top, so we'll just have to work with her for the time being. Before she leaves, she makes sure we got the message. As soon as the coast is clear, we call Anatoly and tell him to pick us up in the morning in the same spot as last time, and to bring us something for personal protection. Renee was right. We need to get to the bottom of this while we still have the chance, and we planned on investigating into Science City further. I just didn't think it would turn out like this. The Great Shepherd is this world's version of God. The average person seems to have some belief in him. However, Mr. Loader here is not one of those people. The way his life turned out and the things he's seen in it have made him reject the idea of a creator, and this whole game merely cements his beliefs further. The entrance to Science City is designed with natural patterns, with a mural of the Great Shepherd himself, with its different parts symbolizing different things. The inner fire represents the shepherd's wrath over the unruly, and his right hand holding the scales of fate, which he weighed each of his new proclamations. This is one part of the game I feel could have been explored deeper, because questions of morality, which this game makes you ask consistently, are always ultimately religious in nature. Science City is the city where all of the technological, scientific innovations and discoveries happen. The city takes in all of the best scientists and their families to live there, providing them with everything they would ever need, including rooftop gardens and sports facilities. Of course, they are allowed to leave, however, they rarely need to, as the city spares no expense for those who are responsible for the advancements of the society. After leaving the tour we used to sneak past security, we found ourselves on the outside of one of the rooftop gardens mentioned before, with a beautiful view of the part of the city the elites of this society care about, where we find Eddie, the head scientist that the minister said would report directly to him. Attempting to speak with him, he's rather rude and completely dismisses us, threatening to call security if we don't leave him alone. When he leaves, he goes inside and we follow him to wait for an opportunity to strike. While inside, we read a newspaper, waiting for the correct time. That time comes when he turns his back to us, trying to enjoy a soda he just got out of the vending machine. Noticing his guard is down, we put a gun to his back and tell him to get inside one of the other rooms. Once inside the room, we tie him to a chair and start asking him questions. As expected, he denies knowing anything about Clarissa Bloodworth, the minister, and whatever Project Artifact is. However, after enough time, he starts to break. Project Artifact is a technology that has, quote, far-reaching social implications. He goes further to say, quote, the artifact has the potential to rewrite the definition of a kind, and thinks that if used correctly, can safely reconfigure the DNA of a living being. And after we release him, he shows us what he means with his lizards. Going through a hidden door to a secret lab, he shows us the ramifications of using this technology with horribly disfigured creatures in test tubes. In the first, a lizard with 6 legs. In the second, a mass of flesh disfigured beyond recognition, if not for its single eye and mouth on the top of its body. And in the third tube, holding a creature he named Daryl 5. To Howard's clear dismay and horror, Eddie explains what they are doing with the artifact, stating that they are using it for splicing species together. You see, Daryl here is the combined DNA of a lizard and a canine. Eddie tells us that this technology is just in the hazmat tent behind him. And when we go in, we see a strange black liquidy mass trapped in a glass chamber. With very little light inside, Howard steps closer to the strange being for a better look and touches the glass with his bare hand. Before he can react, the creature breaks the glass and crawls over him and takes control of his body as the camera fades to black. When the camera fades back in, we see a parade for a festival with thousands of people lining the streets and enjoying themselves as the floats depict many different things from their culture. Walking behind the crowds to the spot Anatoly said he would pick us up, the parade starts to become more and more disturbing. The further you walk down the streets of Granville, you see the beautiful celebration of life and religion turn into a dark hellscape of death and destruction. These same streets Howard himself said felt like home will now hold the memories of the evils in his life and betrayal of conscience. And just when you thought this game couldn't get darker, it does. We change, but we change nothing. There's always a last time you see everyone. There's always a never again. Anatoly's death was honestly something I knew in my heart would happen, but to see it come from us, is something I never expected. Waking up in a dirty tent with a bulbous clump of pulsating sores on our back, we try to leave, but before we do, we see Larry. Being the first person we see since killing our best friend, he gets the brunt of our trauma. Being mentally unstable, we tell him what we did, and in a state of panic and wanting to leave, he tells us to calm down and rest. Larry can see that we're not in the correct headspace or physical state. He gets us to stay here by telling us that we can figure out a plan tomorrow, and in the meantime, we walk around and talk to the other homeless people. Walking to the small wooded area outside for the purpose of collecting firewood since Larry asked us to, we talk to a man gardening, and his name is Dio, the same Dio we were reading about earlier on Rose's computer. He tells us that Rose is safe as well as Leslie. However, Mai didn't make it. She was shot during their attempt to escape outside the wall, and Clarissa is funding the entire thing for an unknown reason. After finding the dry wood we need for the campfire, we rest in the tree, and as we fall asleep, the voice comes back.
Death is coming for all of us. No reason to be uncool about it. I'm pretty chill about it, actually. It's not like you to have a choice. Of course I have a choice. Are you sure? Yes. Interesting. Change sweeps you away when you least expect it, and then you've changed, but you change nothing. I exist again.
Attempting to leave the tent quietly so as to not wake Larry, we fail. As he comes to, we tell him that we need to leave. Being an honest man, we talk about the plan he promised us and asks us if we have one yet. We tell him everything that's going on, with Clarissa, with the apes, and their blood ritual, and about whatever is on her back. As soon as he processes what we just told him to the best of his ability, he asks us what he can do for us. We tell him to find Renee and to fill her on everything. After that, we'll figure out what to do. He tells us he's not sure that it'll work, but he'll try his best and leaves for the day. As we fulfill our errands of finding the right herbs for dinner, we talk to the others in the commune, and their stories are fascinating to say the least. I never thought so much personality could be given and portrayed by characters that only have very few lines of dialogue, but I was happily proven wrong. Like I said earlier, when you have the chance to talk to anyone, do it. Later into the night, after the sun is set, we enjoy our dinner with our fellow treaties under the stars. A soothing and relaxing moment shared with others, and allowing the fast-paced nature of the game to slow down gives us a moment to breathe. Oftentimes, the city can be a lot, and finding times of peace, especially finding them in fellowship, can be rejuvenating to the mind and soul. This moment perfectly accompanied by a song named The Warmth of a Parent's Hands.
For the warmth of parents' hands.
Unfortunately, the peace doesn't last very long. Waking up, we find ourselves in a small room that looks like it was made for a prisoner of the law. The room's walls look like the inside of a cargo crate with a surveillance camera in the corner on the ceiling. At one end, there's a locked steel door, and on the other, a small locked window. After a few moments, the window opens to reveal Clarissa Bloodworth, and behind her, a laboratory. She tells us that the thing inside of us is a symbiotic organism that splices its own genetic code with its host, which, at least in some part, explains the strange voice we've been hearing. This thing has been combining its DNA with ours for a few days, and taking it out will most likely kill us. We ask her what her plan is on using what's inside of us, and to our surprise, she doesn't have one yet. Before leaving us like some dog in a cage, she promises to make taking this thing out of us as painless as possible. After she leaves, Howard smells someone outside. On the other side of the window is a rabbit woman named Belle, and she immediately tells us that her work isn't personal. She says she's only here for tests and their results. However, she seems to have more feeling behind her words than merely a small degree of sympathy. It's hard for rodents in this society to have vocations or jobs such as a doctor or any other high-status position, and for this reason she works for Clarissa. No matter how qualified she was, nobody would let her work in their labs due to their misplaced prejudice to other species, and she uses that as an excuse to work for a murderer. After talking to her about her relationship with Clarissa, she sedates us with gas that comes through a vent above our bed, and afterwards, the tests begin. Talking to her after we wake from what she had done to us, more of her humanity starts to show because we tell her that we would like some fresh air and she opens the window for us. Having it open gives the geezer a chance to fly through. It has a note with it, from Renee. The note reads her concern for our well-being and that she couldn't come back that day since she was being followed. After reading what she wrote to us, we write a response on the back of it and the geezer takes it and leaves. The third round of tests were painful. However, Howard takes the bandages wrapped around his wounds and soaks them with toilet water, puts them in the vent to prevent the gas from coming in, and fakes being unconscious. After this, Belle walks in. Being scared for her life, she gives us the key to wherever we are and tells us that we don't have much time. Before leaving, we tell her to find Renee and that we don't hold any of what she did to us against her. And she thanks us deeply for that. After this, we walk through the lab and leave. Where do we go? I don't know. Somewhere, I guess. We don't know how Howard gets beyond the wall, but to see him walking on the outside is somber and wondrous at the same time. The devastated state he's in as he walks in a wasteland is truly painful to see. This man has tried his best to make the world a better place and sadly failed in doing so. The society they live in is not only destroyed on the outside, but is being destroyed from the inside as well. This game has been a non-stop roller coaster of emotions with twists and turns around every corner, and its ending following suit. As the sun rises above the remnants of a civilization long since past, Howard Loader walks his last steps before falling face first into the sand below his feet. Backbone's ending leaves much to be desired, but I'll leave out what I left out for next time when I cover the sequel. Thank you for watching. God bless you, and good night.